I want you to picture something for me. Just sit back, close your eyes if you can, and picture the exact feeling of being completely, utterly alone late at night.
Oh, that's a very specific feeling.
Right. You know the feeling I'm talking about. It's that specific hour, maybe like 2 or 3 in the morning, where the silence in the room stops feeling empty and actually starts feeling heavy.
Yeah, like it has a physical weight to it.
Exactly, like a weight pressing down on you. It's the kind of quiet that, makes your ears ring, the kind of silence that presses right against your skin.
And you become hyper aware of everything?
Yes, you're sitting in your house, and the house is so profoundly quiet that the sound of your own breathing suddenly feels just a little too loud, a little too exposed.
Like you're suddenly taking up too much space.
All right, you start hearing the house settle, the creak of the floorboards, maybe the hum of the refrigerator, and suddenly you are just hyper aware of the fact that you are the only conscious waking thing in this structure.
It's deeply unsettling.
Yeah.
We are hardwired to feel that exposure.
I mean, if you can tap into that exact vulnerable sensation, then you are perfectly primed for what we are exploring today. Because for this deep dive, we're looking at a brilliant short horror story.
A really masterfully done piece.
Yeah, it's called The Last Broadcast. It was written by author Nibir Singer Roy, and it comes with a very specific dedication. He dedicated it to horror lovers, specifically referencing the community horror servers.
Which is a great nod to the people who really analyze this stuff.
It is. And our mission today is to completely unpack this text. We're going to, put it under the microscope and look at how this incredibly brief narrative constructs just a complete masterclass in psychological terror.
Because it really is an architectural schematic for how to build dread.
Exactly. It's not just a spooky story. We are going to meticulously track this terrifying shift in tone. The story begins with a perfectly calm, almost cozy baseline, and then it systematically dismantles that comfort.
Right. It does this through a series of escalating phone calls. And those calls lead up to a final encounter that is entirely inescapable. It's this very deliberate unspooling of safety.
So let's set the stage for you. Our protagonist is a woman named Maya Rahman. She is the host of a late-night radio show called Midnight Whispers, broadcasting on 91.3 FM.
A classic late-night setup.
Right off the bat, the story anchors us in the concept of the graveyard shift.
Which is such a loaded term, isn't it? The graveyard shift.
It really is. I mean, it's this liminal time when the rest of the city is fast asleep. Maya is this solitary, lonely voice broadcasting out into the absolute dark.
Then think about the kind of people who are awake at that hour.
Right. You have long-haul truckers, third-shift factory workers, insomniacs just staring at the ceiling, maybe people driving home from hospitals.
It's an audience of isolated souls.
Yeah, and Maya is the single thread connecting them all. But to truly understand the power of this story and how the author achieves this suffocating sense of dread, we really have to start before anything goes wrong.
We have to examine the architecture of the isolation that he's building. Because, the horror doesn't work. It physically cannot impact you if the baseline of normalcy isn't perfectly established first.
So true. Maya is sitting in her studio, and the author gives us these incredibly precise sensory details right in the opening paragraph. We are told the clock above the studio door is ticking past midnight.
Very cinematic.
Yeah. And we have the red on-air sign glowing in the dim room, casting this faint crimson wash over the mixing consoles. Overhead, the fluorescent lights are humming. She's drinking lukewarm coffee.
It's overwhelmingly mundane.
I'd actually argue it's comforting. Maya feels completely in control. Her voice is described as calm and steady. She refers to her audience with this affectionate nickname, Night Owls.
She's just comfortably shuffling her notes.
Right. She is the master of this tiny illuminated domain. It doesn't feel scary at all at first. It feels really safe.
I agree that it feels safe to her.
Yeah.
But we need to look at why she feels safe and why that safety is ultimately an illusion.
Which is the core of the horror here.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture of horror mechanics, these specific details like the hunting lights, the ticking clock, the crimson wash, they create a highly relatable setting. But more importantly, they establish the radio studio as a modern liminal space.
Explain that for me, because people throw the term liminal space around a lot online. Usually they just use it to describe like empty shopping malls or weird hallways, but how does it apply to a working, functional radio studio?
Well, a liminal space is fundamentally an in-between place. It's a space of transition rather than a destination.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, a radio studio during the day might not feel liminal. It's bustling, producers are running around, phones are ringing. But at 2 a.m, it transforms.
It totally changes the vibe.
Right, it becomes a brightly lit, enclosed, artificial bubble of humanity and technology. And it is entirely surrounded by the dark, empty streets lying just beyond the studio's glass window.
And the text explicitly notes that the streets outside are empty.
Yes, it highlights the boundary between the safe technological interior and the vast unknown exterior. She is essentially hovering between the waking world and the sleeping world.
I was thinking about this setup, and the best way I can describe Maya's radio booth is to compare it to a diving bell.
Oh, a diving bell. I like that.
Yeah, imagine descending into the deep ocean in this tiny reinforced submersible. Inside the diving bell, it's warm, it's well lit. You have your control panels, your oxygen, your lukewarm coffee.
Everything inside feels rational.
Exactly. Everything inside the bell feels entirely rational and under your complete control. But you are constantly, fundamentally aware that just inches away, on the other side of that thick glass window, there is an immense, crushing pressure.
The ocean is right there.
The deep, dark ocean is right there. If that glass cracks, the ocean doesn't negotiate. It just floods in. The radio studio is Maya's diving bell. The sleeping city outside is the ocean.
That is a phenomenal way to look at it. The pressure is key here. Because inside the diving bell, as you put it, Maya's emotional baseline is absolute confidence. She doesn't feel the pressure yet.
Not at all.
And the text does something else very subtle but crucial right from the jump. It trains the reader to focus almost exclusively on sound.
It really does. I mean, we get the ticking clock, we get the humming of the fluorescent lights. We focus on the steady cadence of Maya's voice.
As a reader, you are immediately prepped to rely entirely on audio cues.
Which makes perfect thematic sense given our protagonist is a radio host. Her entire professional world, like her entire interface with reality, is auditory.
But from a horror perspective, the author is basically making a pact with the reader. He's whispering, listen closely, pay attention to the background noise.
The danger isn't visual.
Right, the danger isn't going to be a monster you see charging across a field. It's going to be something you hear.
And there's something inherently terrifying about auditory threats compared to visual ones. I mean, if I see a threat, I know its size, its speed, its distance from me. I can calculate my odds.
You have data.
Exactly, I have data. But if I just hear a threat, my imagination goes wild. A single strange noise in the dark could be a stray cat, or it could be a home invader.
The brain has to fill in the blanks.
And the brain almost always defaults to the worst-case scenario to keep us alive.
Precisely. It's an evolutionary survival mechanism. We are primed to overreact to unexpected sounds in a silent environment. So the author has built this perfectly constructed bubble of mundane safety.
We have our auditory baseline of humming lights and ticking clocks.
And that baseline is exactly what makes the first intrusion so incredibly jarring. The text lulls us and Maya into this comfortable routine right up until the exact moment the phone line blinks.
So Maya is sitting in this perfectly safe, brightly lit diving bell. But a diving bell only keeps you safe as long as the glass holds. And at 12:45 a.m., we see the first crack in the glass.
The first breach.
Yeah. The phone line on the console blinks. She presses the button, doing her standard upbeat radio intro, you're live on air. Who am I speaking with tonight?
And the response she gets completely shatters that conversational rhythm. There's no greeting. There's no hesitant fan on the other end.
There's just initial nothingness, dead air.
Just a heavy pause.
And then a scratchy hiss of static breaks through. But it's not just described as normal radio fuzz. The author uses a very visceral, tactile description. The voice that comes through the static is described as rasping as though dragged through sand.
Oh, that phrase, dragged through sand, is brilliant because it forces a kind of synesthesia on the reader. It makes the auditory experience feel physical.
It's abrasive.
Yes, it's uncomfortable. It immediately signals that this caller is not a part of the pristine technological world of the studio. This voice is raw, damaged, and gritty.
And what the voice actually says is chillingly fragmented. It says, you shouldn't be here. Just those words broken up.
And then it delivers a very specific warning or prophecy.
Right. It says, accident on River Road, 3 dead. And then the line just goes dead, cuts off completely.
Now, when you read that phrase, "you shouldn't be here," how did you interpret the caller's intent?
I actually found myself totally confused by the motivation, which is what I love about this part of the story. Like, is that meant to be a malevolent threat?
Like a territorial thing.
Yeah, like a monster saying, you are in my territory, get out before I get you. Or, I don't know, is it actually a genuine tragic warning from something trying to save her?
That's a great point.
Like a spirit or some temporal echo saying, get out of this building immediately, you are in grave danger. We just don't know the rules of this entity yet.
And that ambiguity is the absolute lifeblood of early-stage dread. In horror, the unknown motivation of an entity is far scarier than a clear stated threat.
Oh, for sure.
If the raspy voice had simply said, "I am going to kill you," Maya would be terrified, yes, but she would know exactly what she's dealing with. She could categorize it as a violent threat and call the police.
But you shouldn't be here leaves the mind spinning.
It's cryptic. It forces Maya to try and solve a puzzle while she's simultaneously feeling threatened.
And the way Maya handles it is just so deeply human because she doesn't panic immediately. She tries to rationalize it.
She tries to assert dominance over her environment.
Right. She forces a laugh into the microphone. She literally speaks over the dread, writing it off to her audience as prank calling the graveyard shift.
She is desperately trying to pull the narrative back into the realm of the mundane. The anomaly has occurred, and her brain is desperately trying to fit it into a box labeled annoying prankster rather than supernatural threat.
She's trying to patch the crack in the diving bell with tape.
Exactly. It's the denial phase of the fear response.
We've all done that. You hear a noise downstairs and you immediately say, oh, it's just the wind. You don't actually know it's the wind, but you declare it as a fact to soothe your own nervous system.
But the brilliance of this story is that the denial phase is violently cut short. The author doesn't let her sit in that comfortable rationalization for very long.
No, not at all. Exactly 8 minutes later, the horror pivots entirely. It goes from being a spooky, weird prank to a devastating reality.
A huge shift in tone.
Maya is sitting there, probably trying to shake off the weird vibe, and she opens her news browser on the computer. And there it is, a breaking news headline posted exactly 8 minutes ago.
The exact time of the call.
Yes. Fatal collision on River Road, 3 confirmed dead.
This is where the story shifts gears from an eerie campfire tale into profound psychological terror. Let's really look at why this specific plot point hits so hard.
It bridges the gap.
It bridges the gap between a harmless prank and brutal, undeniable reality. The horror is no longer just a weird sound effect on a phone line. It is now anchored to a real-world, verified, fatal tragedy.
The entity on the phone isn't just trying to scare her with spooky voices. It possesses objective, impossible knowledge of death.
It takes the safety net of skepticism and just lights it on fire.
Maya can't tell herself it's a bored teenager in a basement anymore. A bored teenager wouldn't know about a fatal car crash the very minute it happened.
Right. The rational mind hits a brick wall. And notice how the story describes her physical reaction to this realization. It's not just a mental shock. Her body reacts before her mind can even process it.
The story notes that her chest tightens, and this detail is my absolute favorite. That lukewarm coffee she was drinking earlier.
The comfort prop.
The comfort prop. The text says it turns sour in her throat.
It's a perfect depiction of the somatic experience of fear.
Somatic meaning physical, relating to the body, right?
Yes. When your brain recognizes a severe threat, it triggers the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response. Your heart rate spikes to pump blood to your muscles. Your chest tightens as your breathing becomes shallow and rapid.
And your stomach just drops.
Right. Your digestive system essentially shuts down because digesting food is not a priority when you're about to be eaten. That's why the coffee turns sour. Her body is physically rejecting the mundane comforts of a moment ago because it realizes she is in mortal danger.
Her physical reality is rebelling. Because this first call proved to be violently, objectively real, Maya's mental defenses are completely shattered.
The mundane bubble has popped.
The diving bell is flooding and the water is rising fast. She tries to keep the show going, though. The story mentions she puts on old blues records, which is such a fantastic atmospheric detail.
It really is.
It's this melancholic, lonely music playing while she sits frozen in the studio, just trying to shake the unease.
But you can't shake it when the threat has been verified. The baseline of safety is totally gone.
And the clock keeps ticking. The night drags on until we hit 1:07 a.m. and that phone line blinks again.
Oh, that blinking light.
And you, as the reader, know that she isn't answering that phone as a confident, in-control radio host anymore. She is answering it as a target.
She is profoundly vulnerable now. She presses the button, and we enter an entirely new phase of psychological escalation. If the first call was an intrusion of objective reality, the second call is the weaponization of her personal past.
The contrast between the two calls is staggering. I mean, the first voice was raspy, sandy, anonymous. The second voice is completely different.
It's soft.
It's soft, it's feminine, and the text makes a point to note that it's almost familiar. Just hearing it makes Maya's scalp prickle.
The entity doesn't just deliver a cryptic warning this time, it uses her name. It says Maya.
Which instantly removes any remaining professional distance. The caller isn't speaking to the host of Midnight Whispers, they're speaking directly to Maya Rahman.
Deeply personal.
The caller claims to be someone named Anika, and this Anika says they used to sit beside each other in 10th grade. She brings up these insanely specific, intimate memories.
Like doodling flowers.
Yeah, she talks about doodling flowers in a notebook. She talks about how they used to carve their names into the school desk. It's so deeply personal.
It creates a false sense of intimacy, which makes the inevitable twist so much more violating. Because the reader quickly learns, through Maya's internal reaction, that Anika is dead.
She drowned in a lake during their final year of high school.
It's deeply disturbing, not just because a dead girl is calling her, but because of the implications of how the caller knows this.
It is brilliant narrative escalation.
Think about the pacing of dread here. The first call was an objective external threat. It was about strangers, 3 unnamed people in a car crash on River Road, miles away from the studio.
It was scary, but it was distant.
That's right, it didn't belong to Maya. But this second call pivots wildly. It becomes deeply subjective, deeply internal. It is mining Maya's personal history, her childhood, and her unresolved grief.
I was trying to wrap my head around why this felt so much more invasive than the car crash, and I kept coming back to a cybersecurity analogy.
Oh, I like where this is going. Tell me more about that.
Well, imagine Maya's life, her mind, her studio as a computer network. That first call, the raspy voice predicting the car crash, that was like a hacker pinging the outer firewall.
Testing the perimeter.
Exactly, testing the perimeter of the studio. It proved it could breach the broadcast and inject data from the outside world, but it was still external.
It showed it had access to the network, but not the deepest files.
You got it. But the second call, the Anika call, that means the hacker completely bypassed the firewall, bypassed the operating system, and somehow accessed the most private, deeply encrypted, hidden files on the hard drive.
It got into her memories.
It got into Maya's literal memories. It knows about the doodles, knows about the carved desk. The entity is proving to Maya that no part of her is safe, not the studio, not the city, and not even her own mind.
That is a highly accurate way to frame it. The violation of privacy is absolute. The entity is inside her history. And notice how the auditory texture of this second call shifts from the first.
The sound design of the story, essentially.
Right. The conversational aspect, even the one-sided memory sharing, breaks down completely. The line fills with what the text describes as faint sobbing.
Just the sound of someone crying over the radio is haunting enough, but then a single phrase cuts through the sobbing, and it's repeated obsessively, almost hypnotically.
Don't look behind.
Don't look behind. Don't look behind. It just keeps going until the static swallows the voice up entirely.
Think about the cruelty of that specific warning. Don't look behind. It doesn't say run. It doesn't say hide. It demands a negative action.
It demands paralysis.
Yes. It implies that the threat is already in striking distance, and that looking at it will somehow trigger the violence. It is pure psychological torture.
It's forcing her to be an active participant in her own terror. I mean, if she looks, she's doomed.
Yeah.
If she doesn't look, she has to sit there knowing something is right behind her.
It's a classic no-win scenario.
And her physical reaction reflects that absolute trap. Her scalp prickles, her lips go completely dry, her pulse is thudding so hard she can hear it in her own ears.
She doesn't even attempt to laugh this one off to the audience. The denial phase is dead and gone.
She just violently slams the call button off. She has transitioned from unease, past fear, and straight into outright undeniable panic.
She is terrified.
And rightfully so. The entity has breached the physical reality of the city with the car crash, and it has breached the mental reality of her past with Anika. Where else is there for it to go?
This is exactly where the story structure forces the climax. As the clock jumps forward again, this time to 2:30 a.m., there is literally nowhere left for the horror to advance except into Maya's immediate physical presence space.
The geography of the horror has shrunk down to the room itself.
Right.
The scene setting when we hit 2:30 a.m. is so claustrophobic it makes it hard to breathe just reading it. The text explicitly states that the studio now feels like a coffin.
A coffin studio.
Think about how far we've come from that opening paragraph. We started in a cozy, brightly lit bubble, a sanctuary at midnight. 2.5 hours later, the air in the room is described as too still, too heavy.
The environment has turned completely hostile. Every single creak of the building's pipes, every hum of the vents now acts as a silent warning.
It's all ominous now.
The isolation, which she previously enjoyed as the master of her domain, is no longer comforting. It has become a physical trap. She is effectively buried alive in this soundproof room, miles above the empty streets.
And in that suffocating silence, the phone line blinks for the third time.
The dread of pressing that button must be unimaginable.
She does it reluctantly. Her hand is trembling, and the audio landscape changes yet again. This time, there's no scratchy sand static, there's no faint sobbing, there's no hiss, just silence.
The buildup is incredible.
And then the ultimate reveal. The most terrifying moment in the story, she hears a voice. But it's not the raspy stranger with the prophecy, and it's not the soft voice of her dead classmate.
It is her own voice.
Yes, it's her exact broadcast playback from the very beginning of the night. Good evening, night owls.
You're listening to Midnight Whispers.
But it's altered.
Right. The text makes it painfully clear this isn't just an archival recording playing on a loop because of a technical glitch. The voice is wrong. It's wavering. It's warped. It sounds as if echoing from a well. This is the pinnacle of the story's terror, and it taps into one of the oldest, deepest fears in human psychology. Why do you think this specific trope, the mimic, the doppelganger, terrifies us so deeply?
Honestly, because it feels like a glitch in the Matrix, like something fundamentally broken with reality.
Deeper than that, even. It's the ultimate horror because it represents the total corruption or theft of the self.
Theft of the self. Wow.
From the moment we develop consciousness as toddlers, our entire reality is based on the idea that I am me and you are you. Our voice, our thoughts, our identity are the only things we truly own.
So when something steals that...
When an external entity perfectly mimics your voice, it breaks the fundamental laws of reality. The entity is no longer just an external threat trying to harm Maya. It has literally stolen Maya's present identity.
That is horrifying.
The boundary between the self and the monster has completely collapsed.
It's an ego death, a violent one. The voice in the headset, this warped other Maya, stops doing the radio intro. It begins to sob just like Annika did.
It's using her own voice to cry.
And then it begs her, in Maya's own voice, don't turn around, please. Just don't. If you look, it's over.
It is a warning from herself to herself, spoken by whatever is standing right behind her. The psychological loop of that is staggering.
And this is the exact moment where the auditory horror, which has been entirely contained within phone lines and headsets up until now, violently bleeds out into a physical intrusion.
The threshold is crossed.
Maya's body betrays her entirely. The story describes her chest locking up, her throat constricting so tightly she can't draw breath, the single bead of cold sweat sliding down her temple.
Total paralysis.
Her hand is hovering right over the console switch, but she literally cannot force her muscles to fire. She is completely frozen.
It's the biological freeze response taken to its absolute extreme. We often talk about fight or flight, but we forget about the freeze response. Tonic immobility.
Tonic immobility. What does that mean exactly in this context?
Well, in the animal kingdom, when prey is confronted by an apex predator and escape is impossible, the nervous system completely shuts the body down. It's an involuntary paralysis.
Like playing possum.
Similar, but less of a conscious strategy. The brain decides that moving will trigger an attack, so it locks you in place. Maya is experiencing terminal tonic immobility.
The pacing of the text here is just agonizing. The author slows everything down to draw out the paralysis, because while she is frozen, a second sound happens.
The final sound.
And honestly, this is the single sentence that made my skin crawl the most, because this new sound is completely outside the headphones. It's not a hallucination. It's not coming through the digital phone lines. It's acoustic.
It's in the physical room with her.
Yes. Footsteps, not rushing at her, not a jump scare. Slow, methodical, moving across the studio floor behind her.
The text describes them as slow, deliberate.
The predator knows the prey is trapped. There is no need to run.
Exactly.
The footsteps drag across the floor and finally stop directly behind her chair, inches away. She can probably feel the displacement of air.
The cinematic execution of this ending frame is masterful. We have to visualize the scene exactly as the author paints it. We see Maya, frozen in terror, unable to turn around.
And in the background, out of focus.
Right, we see that red on air sign flickering. It's a brilliant detail because it reminds us of the terrible irony of her situation. This entire horrifying sequence, her paralysis, her impending doom, is being broadcast live.
To the truckers, the insomniacs, the hospital workers, they are all sitting in the dark listening to this unfold.
Maya's unable to scream. Her lungs have completely failed her. The freeze response has stolen her breath.
She just manages to force out one final trembling whisper right into the microphone. Just 3 words, please don't. And then dead air.
Dead air until sunrise.
Just static washing over the city. It is a completely devastating conclusion. I mean, we've tracked this narrative from a perfectly calm, controlled broadcast, an oasis of light in the dark, all the way to a fatal, silent encounter.
It's exhausting in the best way possible.
It demands analysis. We need to step back and synthesize what we've just experienced.
We need to look at the blueprints of this story's mechanics to understand exactly why it was so incredibly effective at keeping us paralyzed right alongside the protagonist.
I've been thinking about the mechanics of dread the author uses, and the first major mechanism that stands out to me is what I'd call the shrinking circle of isolation.
Shrinking circle, I like that.
Nibir Singh Roy is a master at using geography and space to build tension. If you map out the locations mentioned in the story, the scope of the horror is constantly and methodically shrinking.
The geographical narrowing is incredibly deliberate, and it mirrors the feeling of a noose tightening. Let's map it out.
Okay, so it starts with the absolute widest lens possible, the entire sleeping city, the vast empty streets outside the window. It's a massive, vague, ambient threat level.
Right.
Then, the first phone call narrows the focus down to a very specific, named location outside River Road. The horror is now real, but it's still miles away.
Then the second call happens.
Right, and the second call bypasses the outside world entirely. It skips over the streets, it skips over the building lobby, and it enters the hyper-intimate space of Maya's headset, invoking a ghost from her past.
The threat is now inside her mind, inside her personal history.
And finally, the third call brings the physical horror directly into the room. It stops literally inches behind her chair. The perimeter of safety has collapsed inward, stage by stage, until it crushes her.
From the city to the street to the headset to the back of her neck.
It is a phenomenal structural technique. It gives you nowhere to retreat. And it pairs perfectly with another classic mechanism you see in folklore and horror, the rule of 3.
Oh, absolutely.
The author uses these 3 phone calls to build a perfect ascending staircase of psychological terror.
The rule of 3 is foundational in storytelling, but here it's used to completely dismantle Maya's timeline. Break that staircase down.
Okay, so call number 1 represents the future, and it represents strangers. It provides a prophecy of an event, the car crash involving people Maya doesn't know.
It's terrifying because it proves supernatural knowledge, but it's emotionally distant.
Exactly. Then call number 2 climbs a step higher. It represents the past, and it represents acquaintances. It brings the horror closer to her emotional core.
It uses the specific intimate memory of someone she actually knew, Anika. It proves the entity isn't just psychic, it's invasive.
And then call number 3 is the top of the staircase. It represents the immediate present, and it represents the self.
Final step.
By the third call, the horror is inescapable because the entity has stolen her own voice. It is her. It has consumed her entire temporal existence, her future, her past, and her present moment.
It leaves her with nothing. No space, no time, no identity. Which brings up what is perhaps the most fascinating structural choice in the entire text.
I know exactly what you're going to say because it was the biggest question I had while reading. For all the dread, all the tension, the author never actually describes a monster.
Exactly. He never shows the monster.
We never get the big reveal. The story ends on dead air. We don't get a description of a creature with dripping claws or glowing red eyes in the dark or some translucent, rotting ghost hovering over her shoulder.
There is absolutely zero physical description of the entity standing behind her chair.
Some people might argue that's a cop-out. They want to see the monster. But I think it's the smartest choice the author made.
It's not a cop-out at all. It is the ultimate exercise in participatory horror. By refusing to describe the monster, the story is actually infinitely scarier, because it forces the reader's imagination to do all the heavy lifting.
100%. The author leverages the medium of radio brilliantly here to amplify the fear. Think about how radio fundamentally works. It inherently requires the audience to fill in the visual blanks.
That's the magic of audio.
When you listen to an audio drama or a radio host, your brain paints the host's face. By leaving the monster unseen, the author makes you, the reader, just as blind and just as vulnerable as Maya's audience listening to the static on their radios.
The unseen will always be more terrifying than the seen. Always.
Because we fear the unknown.
Exactly. The moment you describe a monster like it had tentacles and sharp teeth, the reader's brain categorizes it. It puts it in a box. Okay, it's a tentacle monster. I understand what that is.
It's quantifiable.
Right, it's quantifiable. But an undefined threat. A threat that mimics your voice and tells you not to turn around. The human imagination will always custom tailor that unseen void to represent its own deepest, most personal fears.
The author gives you the outline, but you fill it in with your own nightmares.
It's incredibly interactive. You provide your own terror.
If we summarize this incredible journey, The Last Broadcast really is a masterpiece of narrative efficiency. He utilized just a handful of auditory details, a ticking clock, humming lights, the hiss of static, and 3 short, escalating phone calls to utterly destroy a protagonist's illusion of safety.
It stands as a testament to the fact that you do not need gore, you do not need cheap jump scares, and you do not need a 20-page description of a demon to create profound, lingering horror.
You really don't.
You simply need a deep understanding of human psychology, the primal fear of isolation, and the terrifying power of sound in an empty room.
I want to leave you, the listener, with a final, chilling idea to ponder regarding this story. Something that builds on everything we've discussed today. Think about the fundamental nature of broadcasting itself.
It's a leap of faith, isn't it?
It is. Whether you're a late-night radio DJ sitting in a lit studio, or someone posting a video online, or even just sending a message out into the digital ether, you are sending your voice out into this massive, dark, unknown void.
Hoping for a response.
And you are just hoping that someone, somewhere out there, is listening to you. You crave that connection.
It is a profoundly human act.
Right.
Reaching out into the dark.
Right. We all do it. But ask yourself this tonight when you're sitting alone in the quiet. What happens when the void decides it's tired of just listening? What happens when the void finally decides to answer back? And it uses your own voice to do it.
I think that is a suitably terrifying note to end on.
Stay safe out there, night owls. Keep the lights on.